Promote and rally for the candidacy of former Colorado Rocky and former Montreal Expo and former St. Louis Cardinal Larry Walker for the National Baseball Hall of Fame. This is his last year of eligibility, and the mastermind behind this is Manny Randhawa, who is also who is also he writes for MLB.com, and he is also on the board of directors of Rocky Mountain SABR. So thank you all for coming. Many familiar faces here, many prominent people in the local baseball world. But we are all here to support and promote Larry Walker's candidacy for the Hall of Fame. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get started. In 9 days, we are having our 22nd annual banquet across the street, Coors Field. Clint Hurdle will be joining us as keynote speaker. If you have not yet signed up for the banquet, you can still do so. We can take a credit card here right now, or you can write a check right now. But it should be a wonderful evening, and I hope you all can make it. All right, now I would like to turn it over to the gentleman who's going to be our master of ceremonies for the festivities today. Can we call this Larry Fest? Let's have a warm Rocky Mountain SABR welcome to Manny Randhawa.
Appreciate everybody coming out. This is huge because this is being recorded. It's going to be sent to the national group, so Society for American Baseball Research, and they're going to disseminate it across the country to different chapters. And all right, it's supposed to be over here. We'll do this. And then, you know, a lot of baseball writers, particularly the ones that have votes for the Hall of Fame, follow SABR in various formats. And so Scott Bush, the CEO of SABR, said, "Please record it." It was his idea. He said, "Record this thing, send it to me, and I'll get it out to everybody." Our social media channels, which is about 50,000, and on Twitter and elsewhere. So thank you all for being here. If Larry Walker does get in, Larry Walker is going to get in 5 years, no doubt. Whatever it is for the Veterans Committee now, he's going to get in. But it's not the same. It's not the same thing as being on a writer's ballot for 10 years and then passing your name over every year. When you're one of the greatest right fielders of all time, as we will demonstrate here. So thank you everybody for being here. If he does get in on the writer's ballot, especially, you can all say you were part of that in some small way. So appreciate that. We are very fortunate to have former Colorado Rockies play-by-play broadcaster. In fact, the very first, the original voice of the Colorado Rockies, Wayne Hagin, here with us. He'll be up here. And the gentleman to my right is former Dodgers general manager, former White Sox assistant general manager. I could go on and on and on. The great Dan Evans. So this is going to be really informal, really kind of a casual thing. We don't want it to turn into something where we're trying to corral everybody back to, you know, looking up here and paying attention here. We don't want side conversations and things like that. But we do want free flow. So if you have something you want to say about a particular point or something you want to ask, just raise your hand and we'll do it like at school, right? So that's what this is going to be. We are going to go through these slides up here that we have, basically making the case for Larry Walker. Hopefully these here are going to start working when I start the slides, so that everybody can kind of look where they wish. But if nothing else, we have the big projector right there. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over now to Mr. Wayne Hagin, who is going to basically just tell us. Wayne is in a unique position because he covered Larry Walker from 1995 when he first came here, all the way through his retirement in 2005 with the St. Louis Cardinals, because after he left here, he went and became the Cardinals broadcaster on television. So He's got a lot of great Larry Walker anecdotes. He's known Larry for a long time. That's another thing Larry knows about this. He's very appreciative that we're all here making a push for him, and again, it gives us kind of something to really be invested in when Hall of Fame voting comes. So without going on too long, now I'll have Wayne come up.
In the house, that's amazing to me. We were together with the Chicago White Sox before I got this job in November of 1992, so I was very blessed to know Dan and see him with the Dodgers. Speaking of blessings, this is the first time I've really had the opportunity. In fact, Patrick Saunders is here, and he may not remember this. I hope he does. But at Busch Stadium in St. Louis in 2004, the Rockies came to St. Louis. And you wanted to talk to Larry Walker, and nobody would open that door and let you in. And I got Walker to come out and talk to you because he respected you. That's what it was all about with Larry Walker. Thomas, you know this as well as anybody. Larry Walker never wanted, in my opinion, to be as great as he was. Now that sounds odd, because most players would love to be great. And it wasn't because he didn't want the recognition and didn't want the responsibility that comes with that. Now, that's how some people look at that. All he ever wanted to do was be with his teammates. He never wanted to be treated any differently than his teammates. That's why twice he deferred money with the Rockies. Hopefully they would get some pitching, and hopefully they would get to the postseason. And I saw Larry Walker perform. I did 28 years in Major League Baseball. I broke in with Rickey Henderson. I know what greatness is. I saw it with Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson could run faster than Larry Walker, but there are very few things he could do better than Larry Walker. He was as natural as any player I've ever seen in my life. And if you think about it, there have been over 19,000 Major League Baseball players. There's only one player out of that 19,000 plus who's hit over 350 home runs, batted over 300, stole over 200 bases, and had an on-base percentage of 400. One player. Aren't those numbers enough to get you into the Hall of Fame, let alone everything else he's done? That's what Larry Walker has as his designation in the game of baseball. One player's done it. Not Willie Mays, not Hank Aaron, not Ted Williams, not any of those other greats, and they are truly Hall of Famers. So Larry Walker, to me, was as natural as anybody I ever saw in my life. I'll give you a case in point. I get on the team bus in Philadelphia. That means we have been to Montreal, we have been to New York, and now Philadelphia is the last part of that trip. And as Dan Evans knows, he probably had to try to keep his players out of Atlantic City, but that's one thing that Larry Walker would do. And he always had a limousine. So he either had Darryl Kyle go with him when Darryl was here as a pitcher, Mike Hampton, Mike Lansing, I mean, I could go on and on. There were a number of players that would go with him to Atlantic City. So I get on the team bus, and this really, I think, personifies Larry Walker and his lack of bragging about himself. He shared his stories with you. He didn't think of himself as being anybody better than anybody else. I get on the team bus, and of course he's sitting in the third row because he was so superstitious. Yes. Well, that's where the broadcasters sat on that bus trip out to Veterans Stadium at the time. So I get on, we've got sport coats and ties, and I sit down. I go, hey, Walk. He goes, hey, check this out, man. Pulls out an envelope. I swear to God to you, he goes, check it out. So everybody on the team bus is watching and listening. So I take the envelope, and it says, Harrah's, Atlantic City. He goes, open it up. I open up this envelope, and it says, pay to the order of Lawrence Walker, $120,000. And as a good broadcaster would say, the rich just get richer and everybody laughs. He goes, check it out, man. $10,000 in cash. It was $130,000. And I said to him, blackjack, he goes, you got it. The guy was good at everything he did. He was ridiculous. But here he is, he's not bragging. Thomas, you know that. Patrick, you know that. The guy didn't brag. So that's why he's not even here, pushing himself. I'm glad you are. I'm glad you're here. Because there is a favorite. There's no doubt that Todd Helton is the Rockies guy. His 17-year career, uniform number retired, there is no question. Now there's another guy on that other hot corner that's a pretty good player that if he has that long a career, he could overtake Todd Helton. Nolan Arenado, I'll tell you, is a special player, as you guys all know. But Larry Walker didn't have that benefit of being a Rocky his entire career. I don't know what he would have done. The guy hits 3 home runs in a game 3 different times, and not once does he do it in Coors Field. He does it in Montreal, takes himself out of the lineup. Don Baylor tried to talk him, stay in there. You might have a chance for 40, because I don't want to do it. Let John Vanderwall have the at-bat. Might help us in a game situation. Oh, really? Then we play in the rain in St. Louis, and he hits 3 home runs. Then he goes to Cleveland, interleague play, hits 3 home runs. He doesn't even do it here. But then I see him in his first World Series game. You know, they covet this opportunity to play Major League Baseball and win the ring. Well, they got to the World Series as a Cardinal in 2004. Does anybody have any idea what he did in his first World Series game? Okay, this is the big game. This is the October Classic. This is when he's got to be at his best. He only got 4 hits and hit a home run. He had 2 home runs in that World Series. It was a sweep by the Red Sox over the Cardinals. But that's what Larry Walker did. He stepped up to the plate when it counted. And I remember Jerry DiPolo, the general manager of the Seattle Mariners. He says, I would pay to watch Larry Walker play defense. Because they always sat behind him in that bullpen, which they still do. And they watch him play the game of baseball. So what we're going to do is present it in black and white, as only Manny could do. But if you have any questions at all, from me, from Dan Evans, from anybody else, from Thomas, from Patrick, whoever's here that watched Larry Walker play, don't hesitate to ask, because something happened along the way to this guy as a member of the Colorado Rockies. Maybe he made it look too easy. Maybe he just was so talented that we thought he didn't care. Hogwash. He cared. And when he had a chance, he proved it. So we welcome you, enjoy the evening, and I'll have Manny do what he does best, and that's in black and white, present who should be a Hall of Famer, Larry Walker. Thank you for having me.
Wayne Hagin, everybody. Come on. Well, since this has been up for a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go through this. I spoke with Tim Wallach and Tony La Russa and Walt Weiss earlier during the season about Larry, and these are the things that they had to say. Jim Leland, the Rockies, and we have representatives from the Rockies here. Warren Miller, who is the director of communications. Corey Little, who is also with the communications department. And I've always known as, Nick, and I always know him as Nick, so I don't yet tell him the last name. Carson. Now, the Rockies put this entire fact sheet out about Larry Walker. It's very good. And one of the quotes on there blew me away, and that was the one on the bottom there. Jim Leland, as many of you know, managed for decades. He won a World Series in Florida, managed the Pirates, and he managed here for a year, but he managed Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is the best player I've ever seen, particularly if you ask me, in my lifetime. And Jim Leland was asked about watching Larry Walker, and he said, the best player I have ever seen. That's coming from a man who managed Barry Bonds when Bonds was winning MVP awards every year in Pittsburgh before he went to the Giants. And Tim, I sat with Tim when the Marlins were here, and Tim is Larry's favorite teammate ever. They had a lot of good times. And he said, there's no doubt in my mind that Larry is a Hall of Famer. I've played with a lot of them. Andre Dawson, Tim Raines, Gary Carter, Mike Piazza. As far as all around, every part of the game, Larry is the best I played with. And Tony La Russa, he's seen a few baseball players too. We were sitting in the visitors' dugout, and he pointed to home plate at Coors Field, and he said, "I remember opening day 2001 here, when Larry Walker destroyed one of our rallies with his arm from right field." And later on, he said there wasn't anything he couldn't do. He was the best of the outstanding. And he managed Larry in St. Louis for a couple of years. He said that when Larry was he was told by the St. Louis Cardinals general manager that there was a chance to get Larry Walker at in August of that year, 2004. He was giddy for obvious reasons, but then later, after it happened, he said it reminded me of in 1989, the year after we lost to the A's, the Kirk Gibson home run that year, in 1988, the year after we lost to the Dodgers, I should say. That summer, Sandy Alderson went out and brought Ricky Henderson back. And this acquisition felt like that to me. And Larry went on to hit 11 home runs over the next 6 weeks for the Cardinals, and then hit 6 of them in the postseason that year. And then Walt Weiss, former Colorado Rockies manager, played a lot with Larry. I played with several Hall of Famers. He echoed Tim Wallach. He's the best I've ever played with. What I want to do now, before we go on to the next slide, is I want to kind of along similar lines get Dan Evans' take on this, because Dan Evans has spent decades as an evaluator of talent, and he's seen so many baseball players. If Dan could just come up and say a few things about Larry, and then we're going to have a couple more people speak, and then we're going to get to the real nitty-gritty.
Hey, Manny's done a heck of a job tonight. His preparation for this has been amazing. Please don't tell him the stories, Wayne Hagin. I was young. When Manny asked me to say a couple words about Larry Walker, I'm going to just give you from a standpoint of an evaluator, a GM, an assistant GM. This guy was awesome. And here's what I liked about him the most. There's a couple scouts here, and they'll appreciate what I'm about to say. He really knew how to play the game. His instincts were amazing. And that shows up in 2 areas. Patrick Thomas sees it all the time. Defense, base running. You can't teach it. You either have instincts or you don't. There isn't a single great base stealer or defender who has bad instincts. It's impossible. Can't do it. So here's my thought. The other day I was on an airplane, and I wrote down the guys who had 5 tools in my career. Now I know you hear a lot of scouts talk about 5-tool guys. They do not exist. Okay? They just don't. All the great players are flawed. They either do something average or slightly below, or they do one thing great. And it's so great that that's who it is. Here's the guys I've seen. Robin Yount, Mike Trout. You can disagree with me, that's fine. It's on my little piece of paper. Ken Griffey Jr., Ricky Henderson, to me one of the most dominant players I've ever seen. Dave Winfield, Ryan Sandberg, Andre Dawson. Every one of those is either a Hall of Famer or is going to be. If Trout retired right now, he wouldn't have enough years, but in a couple years he'd be there. I think Bellinger, I think Acuna, Vladdy when he was young, before the turf in Montreal got to him. Ichiro, if he wanted to be. If you ever saw him take PP, I was with the Mariners for 5 years. Warren, you and I saw some really special stuff this guy could launch. To me, Trevor Story. No doubt, fastest guy in the Rockies, and I think a superlative talent. And the last guy, and this is 13 players, Larry Walker. And I remember when I was with the Dodgers, we had an advance meeting, and our advance scout was awesome, Mark Wiedemeyer. And one of the pitchers, Kevin Brown, said, "How do we get this guy out?" And Mark said, "We're not going to worry about Larry Walker. We're not going to let him beat us. We're just not going to throw anything where he can hurt us. On the bases, we're not going to run on him, and heads up, he will take the extra base every time. But we will not let him beat us. For 3 years, he hit 260, and I walked away from every game going, boy, it's about to explode. When's it going to happen? But for me, there's a couple things that I want to just throw at you to put things in perspective. You mentioned number of players in the big leagues. 19,364. Only 132 of them have been inducted by the baseball writers in the first 10 or 15 years. So Thomas and Patrick have that responsibility, and I've never met a writer who didn't take that very seriously. I get calls throughout the off season. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? That percentage is .681. It's not even 1%. So we're talking about the best of the best. So put that into perspective when you think about Hall of Famers. I sat with Frank Thomas the day he was inducted, and I said, Frank, do you realize how special it is just to be on the ballot? So what we're talking about with Larry Walker is the difference between being inducted by the writers and being inducted by a panel 3 years from now. And that'll happen eventually in time, but it would be so wrong if he got in that way. There's been more players put in by panels than there have been by writers. And that shows you how tough it is to be in the Hall of Fame. You could do it all, folks. I know you saw it here, but I saw it and had to write it down and had to evaluate it. I wasn't a fan. Okay, this guy was elite. Coors Field, hey, you know what, if it's that easy, why didn't everybody do it? I had a big talk, I think, Wayne, you remember the night, long rain delay in 2003. Dodgers were a game out, 10 days to go in the season. And one of our guys said, what can that guy not do? And one of the guys said, oh, altitude. And I said, well, then why isn't everybody else hitting 360? Power, ridiculous. Absurd power to all fields. An absolute great base runner, one of the 5 best base runners I've ever seen. Defense, you don't win 7 Gold Gloves being average. You do it by being great. I think only 5 guys in the history of the game have more right field Gold Gloves than him. And that's the toughest position to get in the Hall of Fame, right field. The highest bar because of WAR. So this guy is special. This is not just, I'm stunned that he's in the last ballot. I'm stunned. Because I know as a GM, as an assistant, this guy for me was as good as there was. He was elite, he was great. Manny's going to show you some things today, but I can tell you, when the strike was over in '94, I was with the White Sox, I tried everything to get this guy. And the Rockies signed him. But it wasn't a lack of effort from us and a lot of other clubs, because this guy was a difference maker, because very few players, I mean very few, are both offensive and defensive guys. We're lucky here. The left side of the defense in the infield in Colorado is as great as you'll ever see. And they're also superlative offensive players. And they're both really good guys. Okay, so appreciate those two, because when they get to Walker's state in his career, they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Great players, listen, we're all fans, right? Great players should be in the Hall of Fame. There shouldn't be debates. Tim Raines, Edgar Martinez. It's merely because the ballot has been so cluttered. This guy belongs. I give Manny a ton of credit. I give him a ton of credit for doing what he's doing, because when he first said this to me, this was a no-brainer for me. This guy's as good a player as I've ever seen. I wouldn't say he's the best I've ever seen, but he's in the top 3, and that's pretty darn good. So enjoy your evening tonight. Manny, just great work, and you'll see some things that we're going to bring up that will shed some light on not just how good he was. This guy was great, and there's a big darn difference between real good, good, and great.
Thank you, Jeff. addendum like they're important. We do an addendum here. Because you touch upon it because of your expertise. Base running. How many base runners in the major leagues out of those 19,000 needed a second base coach?
20,000.
Yeah, Larry Walker, when he was in rookie ball, and it's been stated, you probably heard this, if you haven't, you'll enjoy it. He's at first base. He doesn't really know how to play baseball yet. And the beauty about him, what made him great in my opinion, was he never made the same mistake twice. So he's a runner at first base, they put a hit and run on him. He starts to run. The guy hits the ball, hit it in left center field. The left fielder ran over in the alley, made the catch, spun around, threw back to first, and the umpire calls Walker out. Walker throws his helmet down. He goes, I beat the throw. He goes, you can't go across the mound going back to first base. Are you kidding me? That's what he did. He didn't know anything about baseball. And then turns out to be one of the top 3 he's ever seen. Says a lot.